The call came on a gray Tuesday in October in the heart of Boise, Idaho. But for Michael Miller, 52, the cold voice on the other end of the line resonated like a gunshot. A mechanical engineer with over 3 decades of experience, Michael had always considered himself the embodiment of stability. His house, a charming property with a garden and 2 cars in the garage, was the symbol of a life built with effort and planning. However, reality crashed down on him. The mortgage was 2 months overdue, and the bank was giving him only 30 days to pay the full amount under penalty of foreclosure. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead as he tried to process words that seemed to belong to someone else, to another life. How, after so many years of hard work and financial caution, had he reached the edge of the precipice? Michael's ordeal had begun silently, with what he naively called small adjustments. The first blow was the unexpected layoff. In the blink of an eye, the company he had faithfully served for 25 years, and where he expected to retire, opted for a drastic restructuring, cutting the most experienced and, consequently, highest-paid employees. At 52, at the peak of his productivity and with children in college, Michael suddenly found himself without a paycheck. The initial shock gave way to denial. "I'll find something soon," he repeated to himself and to Sarah, his wife, who shared his worries. However, weeks turned into months. Resumes sent vanished into a void. Scarce interviews failed to materialize into offers. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. The second and devastating blow came with Michael's mother's unexpected illness. Without robust health insurance, the costs of medication, therapies, and hospitalizations quickly drained the savings that had been diligently set aside for retirement and the children's college. Every hospital visit seemed to be accompanied by an exorbitant bill, turning family anguish into financial despair. He remembered one night when Sarah found him poring over old spreadsheets, trying to fit in numbers that simply no longer fit. Long-term investments were sacrificed, and the emergency fund, once a source of pride, had evaporated. Using credit cards for basic expenses became a dangerous routine. What was once a tool of convenience transformed into a trap of escalating interest. The minimum balance was paid, but the principal never decreased. Interest rates, which could easily exceed 20% per year, eroded any hope of a quick recovery. Michael, who had always prided himself on his financial independence and prudence, felt a lump in his throat. The numbers didn't lie. According to a 2023 report from Experian, one of the largest credit agencies in the U.S., the average American consumer debt reached a record high, driven primarily by rising mortgage and credit card balances. The study also pointed out that delinquency was on the rise, especially among the demographic group aged 50 and over. This group often faces the double pressure of supporting dependent children and caring for elderly parents with increasing healthcare needs, a scenario that painfully matched Michael's life. The warning signs were there, clear as day, but Michael, immersed in denial and the relentless search for a new job, didn't recognize them in time. The growing delinquency on various accounts, the collection notices that were once sporadic and now arrived daily, the total absence of any financial reserve for emergencies, and the agonizing difficulty in honoring basic commitments like electricity bills or groceries. Every small decision seemed to lead to a dead end. The house, once a safe haven, now felt like a heavy burden. What he feared most, bankruptcy, began to loom not as a distant possibility, but as a shadow rapidly extending over his life. Michael knew he had to act, but the initial panic paralyzed him. Unsure where to begin unraveling the tangle of debts and the imminent loss of everything he and Sarah had built over a lifetime. The feeling of failure was overwhelming, and time, a relentless enemy. He felt trapped in a current, dragged to the bottom, and with each passing day, the hope of finding solid ground diminished. Michael Miller's story, unfortunately, is not an isolated case. Across the American territory, millions of people in middle age, considered by many to be the phase of life where financial stability should be a given, suddenly find themselves on the brink of collapse. In Phoenix, Arizona, Dr. Evelyn Reed, a renowned financial consultant with over 20 years of experience in debt restructuring and bankruptcies, heard daily accounts that echoed Michael's anguish. In her lectures and in her bestseller, Unraveling the Midlife Crisis, Evelyn explained that midlife bankruptcy is rarely an isolated event, a bolt from the blue. It is, more often than not, the result of the confluence of multiple factors, a series of accumulated decisions and events that erode the financial foundation until collapse. She emphasized that the complexity of the American financial system, combined with consumer habits and the lack of planning, created fertile ground for these crises. Evelyn always cited unemployment as one of the main catalysts. Imagine a family with stabilized expenses, perhaps a significant mortgage, plans for their children's college, and a standard of living adjusted to two incomes or a robust single income. Suddenly, one of the income sources disappears, she explained. A recent study by the Urban Institute corroborated this thesis, revealing that workers age 50 and over who lose their jobs take, on average, 3 months longer to find a new position compared to their younger colleagues. Moreover, when they do secure a new job, they frequently accept salaries that are, on average, 15% to 20% lower than their previous one. For Michael, who had worked at his company for nearly 3 decades, the layoff was not just a loss of income, but a blow to his identity and security. He, like many in his age group, was unprepared for the volatility of the modern job market, which no longer offers the same stability as before. Re-entering it for him proved to be an exhausting challenge. With fierce competition and veiled ageism, which often disqualifies experience in favor of younger, cheaper labor. Another financial abyss, according to Dr. Reed, is unexpected healthcare costs. The U.S. healthcare system, predominantly private, is notorious for its exorbitant costs. Even with insurance, a serious illness, an emergency surgery, or continuous treatment can generate astronomical debts. The famous medical debts that affect millions of Americans annually. A report from the Kaiser Family Foundation indicated that, in 2022, approximately 100 million adults in the U.S. had medical debt, a burden that often leads to bankruptcy. The situation with Michael's mother, who required intensive and prolonged care, exemplified this vulnerability. He realized that, no matter how much one plans, a catastrophic health event can dismantle years of savings in a matter of months. The absence of adequate long-term care insurance or the underestimation of chronic treatment costs are common flaws in financial planning that prove disastrous in middle age. Accumulated debts, often masked by the constant and indiscriminate use of credit cards, represent the third pillar of the crisis. Many people fall into the trap of using credit cards as an extension of their income, rather than a tool of convenience, Evelyn warned. Federal Reserve data from 2023 showed that total credit card debt in the country surpassed the $1 trillion mark, and average interest rates for new personal loans and credit card balances reached alarming levels. For Michael, using his credit card to cover basic expenses when his salary stopped, and then the medical costs, became a vicious cycle. Minimum payments only ensured that interest continued to grow, turning small balances into insurmountable mountains of debt. Evelyn also highlighted the lack of long-term financial planning as a chronic error. Many reach middle age without an adequate emergency fund, without a solid retirement plan, or without having paid off their mortgages. They trust that tomorrow will take care of itself. But life always presents unforeseen circumstances that require preparation, she said. Retirement, which should be a period of rest, becomes a financial burden for those who have not saved or invested adequately. The combination of these elements, loss of income unexpected, healthcare expenses, gradual accumulation of consumer debt, and the absence of a robust financial plan, creates the perfect storm that leads many in middle age to the brink of financial collapse. Evelyn always concluded her lectures with the same message. Understanding these causes is not to lament, but to empower. It is the first and most crucial step to charting a path back to stability and, more importantly, to preventing the same story from repeating itself. In the vibrant landscape of Los Angeles, California, the story of Maria Rodriguez, 48, echoed Michael's anguish, but with a different outcome thanks to her proactivity. Maria, owner of a charming antique shop in the Los Feliz neighborhood, watched her business, her family's livelihood, crumble under the weight of the pandemic and subsequent economic crises. Customers disappeared, cash flow dried up, and soon, bills began to pile up. Overdue shop rent, relentless supplier demands, and personal expenses becoming an unattainable luxury. Anxiety was a constant burden, and the fear of losing everything consumed her. However, unlike Michael, who delayed action, Maria, driven by desperation and responsibility for her teenage daughter, sought help. Her first and most crucial action was to seek out a non-profit credit counseling agency. In a country where the credit industry is vast and complex, these certified and regulated agencies offer impartial guidance and debt management plans. Maria found the Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Los Angeles, an organization that became her lifeline amidst the chaos. Financial counseling is a fundamental strategy, and the National Foundation for Credit Counseling reports that most indebted individuals do not have a clear understanding of where their money actually goes. The first step with her counselor was the creation of a strict and detailed budget. Maria had to face the harsh reality of every dollar spent. She reviewed bank statements, credit card bills, and receipts, mapping every expense, from shop rent and employee salaries to morning coffee and streaming subscriptions. The initial shock of seeing the lack of control gave way to painful but necessary clarity. She cut invisible and unnecessary expenses: the gardening service she hired, frequent restaurant visits, expensive cable TV programs, and impulse purchases. Every cut, no matter how small, brought psychological relief and a renewed sense of control. "Every penny saved is a penny earned," her counselor used to say. Next came the most challenging step: debt negotiation. With the agency's guidance, Maria learned techniques for contacting her creditors. She prepared a detailed list of all her debts, from credit cards and business loans to utility bills and shop rent. Her counselor taught her to be honest about her financial situation, to explain her difficulties, and to propose more realistic payment terms. To her surprise, many creditors were willing to negotiate, especially since a renegotiation would result in some payment, rather than a total loss in case of bankruptcy. She managed to negotiate lower interest rates on her credit cards and, crucially, an extended payment plan for the shop rent, which gave her vital breathing room. Research from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau indicates that, in many cases, direct negotiation with creditors or through counseling agencies can reduce the total debt amount by up to 30% or more, depending on the type of debt and the creditor's willingness. Maria also explored relief programs for small businesses affected by the pandemic, which offered additional support. The third and equally vital strategy was to increase income. While cutting expenses, Maria realized she needed additional cash flow. She began to explore new avenues for her business. Antique pieces that didn't sell well in the physical store were listed on online platforms like eBay and Etsy, reaching a global audience. Furthermore, Maria, who had vast knowledge in antique appraisal, began offering consulting services to collectors and individuals who wished to sell family heirlooms, a service that generated significant extra income with very little cost. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has recorded a notable increase in the number of Americans with side hustles or parallel jobs, reflecting the growing need to supplement primary income. For Maria, this diversification was not just a way to pay the bills, but a way to innovate and expand her business beyond its physical limits. Maria's journey was not without sacrifices, sleepless nights, and moments of discouragement. But the combination of a strict budget, proactive negotiation, and the tireless pursuit of new income sources allowed her, little by little, to get out of the red. She learned that immediate and consistent action, no matter how small, was the key to reversing the crisis and building a sustainable path for the future. Her story became a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of seeking professional help when the situation seems untenable. In Austin, Texas, under the vast and sunny sky, David Chun, a 45-year-old software developer, observed his older brother Michael's financial crisis with a mixture of apprehension and empathy. Unlike Michael, David had walked a more secure financial path, driven by an early interest in personal finance and unwavering discipline. He had delved into books, podcasts, and online courses, building a knowledge base that protected him from the very mistakes that now tormented his brother's life. David fervently believed that financial education was not a luxury for the rich, but a fundamental necessity for everyone. The first lesson David always emphasized and tried to convey to Michael was the importance of understanding and meticulously monitoring cash flow. "You can't manage what you don't measure," he used to say. Many Americans, according to a comprehensive survey by FINRA, do not have a formal budget and have little clarity about where their money actually goes. This lack of visibility leads to subtle, uncontrolled spending, where small daily expenses, such as expensive coffees, eating out for lunch, or impulse purchases, add up and erode the budget, turning into large debts. David, for example, used financial management apps like Mint or Manabee to categorize every expense, track his investments, and review his finances weekly. This routine allowed him to adjust his habits in real time, avoiding unpleasant surprises at the end of the month. He taught Michael that a budget is not a straitjacket, but a map that guides financial decisions, allowing one to spend consciously and according to their values. The second common mistake David identified and fought against was underestimating the importance of an emergency fund. The Federal Reserve Board reported in 2023 that a staggering 37% of Americans would not be able to cover an unexpected $400 expense with cash quick sales or credit cards that could be paid in full on the next statement. This means that any unforeseen event, an unexpected medical bill, an urgent car repair, an unforeseen home renovation, or, as in Michael's case, job loss, can quickly lead to massive debt and the debt spiral. David, from the beginning of his career, prioritized building a reserve of at least 6 to 12 months of basic expenses. This money was kept in a separate, easily accessible high-yield savings account and treated as a non-negotiable financial insurance. For him, this reserve was not just a number on a spreadsheet, but a financial cushion that provided peace of mind and the ability to face adversity without resorting to expensive loans. The third crucial point in David's doctrine was the aversion to long-term planning, especially for retirement and major life goals. Many in middle age postpone retirement planning, believing they will have enough time, but end up losing the exponential power of compound interest. A study by the Employee Benefit Research Institute frequently points out that a significant portion of American workers have little to no retirement savings. Furthermore, the lack of a strategic plan for mortgage payments, children's education, or other large future expenses can create overwhelming financial pressure decades later. David, on the other hand, began investing in an employer-sponsored 401 plan and an individual retirement account from his first paychecks, maximizing annual contributions and taking advantage of tax benefits. He also diversified his investments to ensure sustainable growth. He also taught about the trap of lifestyle creep, where people increase their spending proportionally to their income without increasing their savings. Financial education, for David, was not just about numbers and complex formulas, but about habits, mindset, and psychology. He believed that by understanding the basic principles of personal economics, developing the discipline to save and invest consistently, and cultivating a mindset of abundance and responsibility, most financial crises could be avoided or at least significantly mitigated. He shared with Michael the importance of protecting oneself against risks, such as having adequate insurance, and of periodically reevaluating one's financial situation to make necessary adjustments. Michael's painful journey was a sad but powerful reminder of the cost of not preparing financially and the transformative power that financial knowledge can have in anyone's life. David hoped that, through his own experience, Michael could not only recover, but also become an advocate for financial education for his own family. In Boise, Idaho, after the flood of information and the initial shock of his financial situation, Michael Miller began to see a small light at the end of the tunnel. He eagerly absorbed the lessons from his brother David and the inspiring stories of recovery. The message was clear: to get out of the hole and not just survive, but thrive again. He needed not only to drastically cut expenses, but also, crucially, to increase his income. In a country where the cost of living is a constant concern for most families, the pursuit of extra income has become an essential strategy for millions of Americans. The gig economy and side entrepreneurship have gained strength, offering paths that did not exist before. Michael's first and most immediate step was to identify his skills and how he could monetize them outside of his traditional employment. As an experienced mechanical engineer, he possessed vast technical knowledge and a highly valued problem-solving ability. He began to explore the world of online freelance work, seeking consulting and design projects on platforms like Upwork, LinkedIn Profinder, and Toptal. Initially, proposals were scarce and payment was modest, but Michael's persistence paid off. He learned to optimize his profile, present more attractive proposals, and build an online reputation. With each small project completed, he not only received payment but also regained a bit of his self-confidence and the feeling that he was still a valuable professional. According to a MasterCard gig economy report, the gig economy has grown exponentially in recent years, with millions of Americans turning to temporary freelance or project-based work to supplement their primary income, or even as their sole source of livelihood, injecting billions of dollars into the economy. In parallel, Sarah, his wife, who had always had an exceptional talent for baking, decided to turn her hobby into a small business, following Maria Rodriguez's example. She began taking orders for custom cakes and sweets for birthday parties, weddings, and local corporate events. What started in her home kitchen, with Michael's help on weekends for deliveries and organization, quickly gained a small clientele. Income diversification, for them, was not a luxury or a pastime, but a lifeline that provided vital additional cash flow to pay bills and start rebuilding their savings. This multi-source income approach reduced their dependence on a single salary, making them less vulnerable to future economic shocks. In addition to generating active extra income, the focus shifted to smart investments, even with little initial capital. Michael and Sarah's goal was not to get rich overnight with high-risk speculations, but to make their money work for them consistently and securely. They started with small monthly contributions to a low-cost index fund, which replicates the performance of a market index, such as the S&P 500. The beauty of index funds lies in their inherent diversification, which minimizes risk by spreading investments across hundreds or thousands of companies, and their extremely low management fees, making them an accessible and effective option for beginner investors. According to the Investment Company Institute, assets in mutual funds and ETFs in the U.S. continue to grow exponentially, reflecting the popularity of these investment vehicles among a wide range of investors. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the financial consultant, always emphasized that starting small is better than not starting at all. She also advised taking full advantage of the tax benefits of retirement accounts, such as the employer-sponsored 401 and the individual retirement account. These accounts allow money to grow tax-deferred, and in some cases, contributions are tax-deductible, offering a double benefit. Michael and Sarah learned that the discipline of consistently saving and investing, even in small amounts over time, creates a powerful snowball effect due to the power of compound interest. Extra income and smart investments were not a magic solution, but a fundamental part of the long-term strategy to rebuild their financial security, ensure they never again found themselves in the same vulnerable situation, and ultimately build a more prosperous and secure future for their family. They understood that financial independence was not a destination, but a continuous journey of learning, adapting, and taking action. Michael and Sarah's journey to pull themselves back from the brink of bankruptcy was, without a doubt, the most challenging phase of their adult lives, but it was also the most instructive. In Seattle, Washington, where David Chung, Michael's brother, continued to prosper financially, the maxim was clear and unequivocal. Recovery is just the beginning. True victory, lasting freedom, lies in building and maintaining long-term financial security. They didn't just want to put out the fire. They wanted to prevent it from starting again. The first pillar of this sustainability, Michael learned through practice and much sacrifice, is the maintenance of a flexible and, above all, realistic budget. The excessive rigidity of the past, which prevented them from enjoying small things, had been replaced by conscious, yet malleable, control. It was no longer about strictly cutting everything, but about having clarity on where the money was going and making adjustments as life changed. They reviewed their budget monthly, adapting it for unexpected expenses or for new financial goals. This strategic flexibility avoided the frustration and giving up that many face with overly restrictive budgets. They used the budget not as a list of prohibitions, but as an empowering tool that allowed them to allocate resources to what truly mattered, and avoid unnecessary spending that previously diverted them from their path. The second pillar is the continuous strengthening and protection of the emergency fund. The traumatic experience of Michael's layoff and his mother's unexpected medical expenses taught them, in the hardest possible way, that unforeseen events are the rule, not the exception. After paying off their most urgent debts, they diligently focused on rebuilding this reserve, ideally with 9 to 12 months of basic expenses. This financial cushion, kept in a separate, easily accessible account, was not for investments, but for peace of mind. Federal Reserve data consistently shows that families with robust financial reserves have significantly greater recovery capacity and financial resilience in the face of unexpected economic shocks, such as a recession or a personal crisis. For Michael and Sarah, this reserve became a protective shield against life's uncertainties. The third crucial element is continuous financial education. The financial world is constantly evolving, with new technologies, investment products, tax laws, and economic challenges. Michael and Sarah, who were once oblivious to many of these topics, transformed into avid learners. They began reading personal finance books, following expert blogs and podcasts, and participating in online seminars on investment strategies, retirement planning, and debt management. This relentless pursuit of knowledge empowered them to make more informed decisions and avoid falling into new financial traps. They learned that financial intelligence is not an innate talent, but a skill that can be developed and honed throughout life. Income and investment diversification became a routine and essential practice for long-term security. Michael continued to seek freelance engineering consulting work, and Sarah expanded her cake and dessert business to include baking workshops, ensuring they were not dependent on a single source of income. This multiplicity of revenue streams made them more resilient to fluctuations in any sector. Regarding investments, they no longer limited themselves to a single index fund. With the help of a trusted financial advisor, they began to diversify their portfolios to include a small portion in real estate, fixed income securities, and even explore opportunities for small investments in local startups, seeking to reduce risk and optimize long-term returns. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, was the profound change in mindset. Bankruptcy was no longer a taboo or a source of shame, but a harsh, yet valuable, lesson learned. They developed a healthier relationship with money, based on responsibility, gratitude, and a clear purpose. Money was no longer an end in itself, but a tool to achieve security, freedom, and time to enjoy family life. The experience brought them together, making them stronger, more resilient, and more aware of their priorities. Michael and Sarah's journey, though punctuated by moments of despair and uncertainty, culminated in a stronger and more robust financial foundation than they had ever had. An undeniable testament that bankruptcy, though painful, can be the catalyst for lasting financial transformation and the building of a truly sustainable future. They had become masters of their own financial narrative, controlling the destiny of their money and, by extension, their lives.